Welcome to the Optimal Bio podcast. At Optimal Bio, we don't just balance your hormones, we balance your whole body. Our conversations range from nutrition to medicine with an emphasis on wellness tips to support your health journey. If you like what you hear, find us on the web at optimalbio.com and follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Thank you for joining another episode of the Optimal Bio podcast. Today, Brit and I are talking all things working out. We both love working out, so we're excited to talk about why everyone should work out as well. Brit, thanks for joining us on this Monday.
Of course. Thanks for having me back.
All right. So working out, we're really going to dive into bullet forms of things that you can take away from the why, because I think the why is so important to keep things up, especially with New Year's resolutions. I think January 11th is the day most people quit or something.
Yeah, I forget the statistic. I think it's 80% or something crazy high.
Crazy. So we're going into, of course, the importance of working out, how to bring it to your day, but the why, which hopefully will help people go past January 11th.
Yes, I love it. I love talking about the why. And also I want to make sure that we emphasize recovery too, and sleep and all things just wellness and bringing it full circle. So yes, love to dive into this topic.
Absolutely. Because I think, medicine, wellness, they're not in a bucket, right? Your body works together. So, which is so important about working out, which we'll go into. Yes, working out is so important, but if you're not eating right, if you're not sleeping, if you're not hydrating, you're going to be missing so many pieces and probably get frustrated of why you're not seeing what you want to see when you're working out.
100%. And I often think if you're starting from scratch, right, and you're trying to better yourself, yes, you can make these improvements in individual categories and you'll probably see some results, but to really see full body wellness and changes, and you want to take pieces from every aspect of wellness and really try to optimize in every area. And I think always coming back to the why is really important. So I love to talk about just how to stay on track of your goals. And I do think that the why is the key.
Exactly. Because hopefully then it makes it a lifestyle, right? And not a 5-month thing, I want to get till summer, right? But understanding it's a lifestyle thing, because then you can build on it, which I think it's the fun part of wellness and science and medicine.
Agreed. And then you can, really optimize and just keep using different fun tools or programs and things like that. So yeah, I agree.
Oh yeah, what's the next test I can do? What can I do? I'm always looking at these places I can go to, one day in my life. I'm
I know, but you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere small, and then you can build on, which is the fun part, like you said.
Exactly. And you can't just go to a retreat and hopefully that's going to change your life. It is the day-to-day that is what's going to change your life.
Absolutely. The consistency. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So let's start with, what types of movement are the most beneficial for overall wellness? And does this differ for men and women? Which we could talk about this for an hour, but
100%. So first and foremost, I wanted to say all movement is good movement. There's not a movement that could be bad for you. And when I'm working with someone who isn't really into fitness yet or hasn't found that movement that just clicks yet, I'm like, well, what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy dancing? Do you enjoy hula hooping? Do you enjoy jumping rope, right? All of these things are movement and they're all going to be beneficial. And that doesn't differ between genders. It's just point blank, a blank statement, all movement is good movement. And it's all beneficial for wellness. But then we can get definitely granular and into specifics, of which we will. But I like to start there because I don't want to sound one movement's better than any other movement. They're all important for the body. And I think when you find enjoyment with them, you're more likely to stay consistent, like we were talking about before. So if you haven't found that movement that you really like yet, keep going, you will find it. And that is just as important as, cardio, strength training, all of that. But I'll definitely get into the specifics. So the main types of fitness are going to be cardiovascular exercise, strength training, flexibility, mobility work, mind body practices, and functional training, I think are kind of like the big ones. And again, really the idea is just to find something that feels good for you and that you enjoy, physically and mentally, right? Because it's important in both regards. But it should be a challenge too. So I don't want you to like coast by to get the most out of exercise. It should be a challenge at times. And I hear that a lot. Like, it's just really hard. It's just really hard. And yeah, it should be hard. It's not, if you want to see the benefits from it, it should be hard at times. Not every single day, but you should be pushing yourself quite a bit. And so as far as like differences between men and women, I don't really think that there is any in terms of like what's really important. I think women should 1,000% be doing weight training, just like I think men should 1,000% be doing flexibility and mobility work, right? Which is like, I feel like there is gender differences a lot of the times when it comes to like what we gravitate towards. So in terms of like for overall wellness, though, I don't think there really is a difference. I think we should all be doing a combination of all of the important exercises. So I'll get into like each one and give examples, but feel free to stop me too and give yours. But from a cardiovascular standpoint, it's going to improve your heart health, right, and endurance. And those are things like swimming and dancing and hiking and running, even fast walking, right? So everybody should be doing that. It doesn't matter who you are. We should be doing some cardiovascular training. Same with strength training, right? So like weightlifting and body weight exercises, like push-ups and lunges and squats, resistant band work, right? All of that is going to be helpful for building muscle mass and improving metabolism, and even supporting bone health, which is extremely important for everybody, especially women as we get older, right? So I think everybody should also be doing strength training, and like flexibility and mobility work. We know that it improves posture and helps joint health. So things like yoga and Pilates, dynamic stretching, that's also really important. And then we have the mind body practices. And I'm sure we're going to get into the why behind, mental benefits behind exercise, but things like yoga and Tai Chi, they activate the mindfulness aspect, and the stress reduction aspect of exercise, and promotes overall wellness because it lowers our cortisol levels, right? And improves our mental clarity. So that's really important. And then the last little bucket I like to touch upon is the functional training. So those movements that mimic our everyday movements, and they can improve your ability to perform daily exercises. So think like compounding movements like deadlifts and lunges and squats, kettlebell workouts even. They're so important for, strength, flexibility. It's kind of like a mix of all things. So yeah, I think all movement is important, and those are definitely the top buckets, but we should all be having a combination of them.
And I think too, a lot of times, especially with wellness and health and medicine, it can be too confusing, right? There's so many things you should do and how many boxes I should click. And I think with movement, really sticking to the basics, because the basics is what you need. It's like strength training. Like you said, it builds muscle. It builds your bone. It gives you flexibility. And people are like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like, oh, what does that mean? It can help reduce your chance of cancer, diabetes, heart attacks, dementia, osteoporosis. Your muscle think about it, your heart's a muscle. Your muscle plays impact with your immune system. So really going into, okay, thinking about the why, but really just taking it. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Go walk. I think people forget about the importance of walking. And then, like you said, lunges, squats, deadlifts.
$10 resistance bands. Yeah.
Yes, yes, but really focusing on those basics, because the basics are and honestly, the basics are what you're going to see in every type of class. It's like those are the fundamentals, right? And I think too, remembering like repetition's wonderful for working out. Of course, you can change the tweaks, but having those core movements.
100%. And I also want to take a step back and say that, like, if you're starting off with exercise, of course, you're not going to just like go and hit a 6 day, schedule of exercise and have everything like this. We start slow and we start to incorporate these things little by little. So, I always like to say, start with what's accessible to you and what's enjoyable, because that's what's going to stick. So yeah, if it is walking, because that's accessible to most of us, if not everybody, get out and walk, right? If that is getting on YouTube and finding a 10-minute resistant band workout, then that's what you do, right? You start slow and you start to incorporate and you start to enjoy, because you reap the benefits, right? You're able to see like, hey, I actually feel a lot less stressed when I do this. Or, hey, you know what? I have more energy after that. Or I've been able to lower my hemoglobin A1C a couple points just from walking, right? So I think it's like long-term why. And like you said, there's so many different reasons behind the why, more so than just I want to look good, which also is a reason, right? I'm 100%. So I think, but that's what we typically as a society get caught up on. And I think we forget about the other reasons. And so, yeah, I think starting slow, but recognizing that all movement is important.
And I think too, especially if you're just starting out, I tell everyone this, if you've been working out for 5 days or 5 years, you need to schedule like a meeting so that you're not going to miss it. I think is huge. Like I'm a morning workout person. That is how I set my day. But whatever works for your schedule, put it down on your calendar so that that's that consistency. And then by week 2, you're going to want to go, because whether it's a 15-minute workout, 45-minute workout, it is that time that your brain is just quiet and focusing on that workout.
I think that's one of my top like recommendations when I work with patients and clients. It's scheduling it in, just like meeting. And once you start to do that, you actually recognize that you can fit it in. And sometimes like our days, there are circumstances where you can't fit it in at times. But once you start to see like, hey, I actually do have like a 15-minute gap in between here. Let me just go do some push-ups and lunges. Like it doesn't have to be a full hour, right? Of movement. And I think that is also a really important thing to note, is it doesn't have to look like you getting into your car, going to exercise class, or going to the gym for an hour and a half. It could literally be you pacing back and forth on a business call, walking around your neighborhood. It could be doing lunges and push-ups in your kitchen, right? So, I mean, obviously we can build on that, but as a starting point, most of us can fit in 10, 15 minutes of movement daily. And once you start scheduling it in, it's a visible thing and you start to hold yourself accountable.
Completely. And what we'll get into, I know, in a few minutes, you're not supposed to work out every day. So you can pick 3 or 4 days a week that you have that time block that you can work out.
You can do it. And most of us know which days are a little bit lighter. Yeah. And then if you have the ability, carve that time out, right? If you have like an hour, let's say lunch break, use 20 minutes of that to exercise. If you have, 15 minutes in between a call, try to go around the building for a couple of laps, right? I mean, you can always fit in a little bit more movement throughout the day. So I think that's a really good point. I'm picking those days wisely, and scheduling them in like a business meeting.
Exactly. And we kind of touched on this, but what would you recommend to someone that's new to working out, so that they keep up with it and they can build on it instead of go, 7 days week 1 and it's like, wait, this is way too much.
Yeah. I think starting slow, obviously, really picking those days. So if you're someone that's brand new to exercise, and I think there's a couple different buckets, right? Like brand new to exercise, really want to start, I would encourage you to pick like 2 days, and stay accountable to those 2 days, right? So if it's like one day during the week and one day during the weekend, pick those days and stick to that until you feel like that is so ingrained in your schedule that you can add in another one, right? And then do something that's accessible to you, like we were talking about before. So don't make the barrier to entry more difficult for yourself. If you want to stick to something accessible, do something that's right at your home or at your office, right? Like walking or lunges or body weight, things like that. If you're someone that has been working out but really wants to take it up a notch, then I think we take it up a notch, right? Try a different form of exercise to complement it. If you're normally someone that does cardio, maybe you try to get into the gym for a weightlifting session once a week. Maybe if you are really lacking in sleep hygiene, we want to start to improve your recovery aspects a little bit and working on that. If you're someone that's super high stress and you're doing a lot of HIIT training, but you're also really stressed at work, maybe we change the movements up a little bit and really start to work on slowing things down and bringing your cortisol levels down, right? So, and then, I always think no matter what your goal is, you always want to make sure you're eating right to complement this too, right? So, because whether it's improved physical performance or the way you look or mental clarity, nutrition, it always comes back to nutrition. And so you want to make some changes there too. So I always think it's about where you're at in your fitness goals, but then what else is going on too that we can work on.
And two, like you had mentioned, working out is supposed to be hard, right? It's supposed to push you. That's what makes you better. And remembering that, like, it might be uncomfortable to carve out that time to wake up 30 minutes earlier but that is what our bodies need, because then you feel better, right? And I think that's just, you have, especially like we're so used to, like, in America, for most of us, right? We're not worried about, like, think about back in the day, like, are we going to be eaten by an animal? Are we going to have food to eat? Right. But so we got kind of too soft, right? So remembering that discomfort is good.
Something's changing and working, right? Now, I don't want you to be like in physical pain when you're exercising. Like, there's being uncomfortable and then there's pain, true pain. If you're in true pain, you would know. Obviously, don't push past the point of like pain. But yeah, a little bit of uncomfortability is important for change and for growth. And that's how our muscles grow. But just as important is that recovery aspect, right? So if you are someone who does like a HIIT training and then, strength training, and then, I don't know, a big long run back to back to back, you're probably going to need a recovery day, if not two, right? And I think it is just about listening to your body, recognizing the signs behind, like, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but the signs behind not recovering properly, right? Knowing your body and knowing what is uncomfortable, but what is painful, right? And what's going to be detrimental and what's also going to be beneficial for you. It's all about that balance, right? But yes, exercise definitely is not supposed to be easy. If it was really easy, no one would have a problem doing it. We'd all do it every single day, no problem. So yeah, it is going to be challenging, but challenges typically produce the results that we want.
And two, for the mental aspect, if you're like subconsciously, you don't realize it, but once you get through a workout, then you're able to manage your life better, whether a stressful situation, a conversation, and that day over day just builds on it. Have you watched the Aaron Rodgers documentary?
Oh yes, a while ago. I was like, did I? Yeah, I did.
And he's talking about pain and discomfort, and like, think about it. Like, most discomfort is not pain, and I think it's just a good reminder.
A very good reminder. And yeah, and that's what I was meaning. Like, we all know pain, what pain feels like. Obviously, we don't want you to get there. But discomfort's different. Discomfort is more of like, I feel like a mental blockage that we kind of have to push through to get to where we want to be. And it's not something that happens like that. You do have to like learn how to work through it and how to stick to it to see the benefits that you want, and if physically, mentally, all of it. So I do think that is an important distinction to note.
And I think too, that's why, depending on, some people love working out at home and there's incredible apps, but also like a class is wonderful because you signed up. If you don't show up, you'll probably going to get charged for it. The trainer may say, "Hey, where are you?" So it's okay to be like, I need that accountability. Like, I love a class. And so just seeing what works. And at the end of the day, you may not ever be the person that says, I love working out, but you can go twice a week, right? And what does that mean? And like you said, walking, like, I love ankle weights. So I'll go just put on my ankle weights and just walk around.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing that I love more than walking. Yeah, I love it. I love it for the mental aspect and like, you know, it can be meditative. You can, there's just so many different things that you can do. But yes, I love that. And I think it is important to note that there's different ways to exercise for different personalities. And so if you know, if you're somebody that like really likes that accountability piece, that's great. Utilize that, right? Have that as the factor to motivate you to go. Like the financial accountability or the personal accountability from the trainer or your friends or a group, like that's a great way to keep going. Sometimes, you know, it could be a spouse that you guys like team up and you can hold yourself accountable. So at the end of every day, you go for a walk or you do a fitness activity or whatever it is, or it could be a family thing. Every Saturday, you go play a different sport or something. So, you know, movement is movement. And that's what we were talking about earlier. It's like there isn't one movement that's better than the next. I think it's just what makes you move is important. What makes you get out there and move your body is going to be my recommendation always. And then if you're looking to optimize, yeah, trying to get in all these different modalities, it can be really beneficial for so many different aspects of your health.
And I think too, just we mentioned this, but just reminding that there's so many resources out there, whether it's YouTube, an app. Like I think too, sometimes people get overwhelmed with like, how do I create a workout? It's like you don't have to do that, which is that's why like I just think this is a good reminder. Is because I was talking to someone the other day about they're like, well, I don't know how to work out. I'm like, one, you can figure it out. I was like, yeah, I was like, but you don't have to. I'm like, there's so many resources now that is so wonderful, and great pricing, right? That YouTube's free, apps are, $10 a month, but just remembering that you don't have to come up with it. That's why I love working out, because it's 45 minutes that I'm not thinking about anything. I'm being told what to do, which is lovely. So just remembering that you don't have to feel like you're responsible for it. There's a plan in whatever way you're going to look at it.
Also, I feel like when I was just starting off with exercise, I used to do classes and I still do a lot of classes. But when I was like, you know what, I really want to try to do this like on my own, it was the most terrifying thing in the entire world for me. Like I was so, I was terrified. I was like mortified to go into the gym alone. I had no idea what I was doing. My boyfriend at the time was like, now he's my husband. He was always made so much fun of me because he was like, just go to the gym. You have to start somewhere. Like, just watch people. And I'm like, I don't want to watch people. That feels like creepy. Like, I don't know what to do. But I literally went on YouTube and I would study different movements, like compound movements, like the deadlift and, pull-ups and push-ups. And I literally just like would watch videos of them. I would even bring it up to the gym too, like on my phone, have it there and try to copy it. And was it really mortifying at first and like embarrassing? Sure. But then after a while, I realized not one person was paying attention to me because everyone else is in their own little world. And you can always ask, there's always going to be trainers around, right? And so even if you don't want to pay for like a trainer session, a lot of times they have like a one-off if you join a gym where the trainer will like show you around and the movements and things like that. So I do think that like it takes time to build that confidence. And even now when I go into the gym, sometimes I'm like, what do I do? Like, I don't, but then I revert back to like the things that I know to work and to be helpful for me. But at the end of the day, it's just movement, right? You move your body in a way that feels good for the most part. Of course, a little bit of uncomfortability is good, but moving your body is the goal.
Oh yeah, and if I go to the gym like on my own, I use an app. It's called the Moves app, and I love it. And yeah, and it's because I don't want to worry about what I'm going to do that day, and so and that's okay. Like one time, my brother was like, "You've literally worked out your entire life. Like, why do you go to a class?" I'm like, one, I love a class, and two, like I don't want to think of a workout, and that's okay, right? So just
It allows you to do it and allows you to enjoy it and you stay consistent, right? If you were to take that class away and you'd be left to your own devices, it probably would be a little bit more challenging at first for you. Not saying you couldn't do it, you'd figure it out, but it would be a barrier for you to keep going, right? And so I think of that like too, it's just your personality, mine too. I much prefer to go to a gym and have that social aspect and have a trainer kind of like tell me what to do versus being left to my own devices, which again, like you can learn, you could do, I did, but it's just a personality thing. And I want to make sure that I stay consistent with my training. So I think it's just comes down to your goals, moving your body, what's going to make you consistent, and what's enjoyable for you the most, you know?
And two, I think I always remind myself of this and like the wellness journey. Different seasons are going to bring different types of workouts as well. And your body may be craving something different, and that's okay. Like I went through, seasons of all hit. Then we'll get into this. That I realized should not be doing hit 5 days a week. I've gone through Pure Bar, Metabolic, right? Like, and then depending on like if I'm traveling, I'm going to try a spin studio. So I think just remembering that the beauty of life is there's going to be different seasons. You're going to feel like that you want to be pulled to something else, or maybe even where you live. Like they're going to have different options, and that is okay. Just knowing, just still moving, right? Which we've been talking about. But I think sometimes it's a good reminder that things are going to change, which is a good thing, and just allowing that to be okay.
It is okay. Yes. I love that.
And you kind of mentioned, the importance of rest, which so important in life, but especially when working out. And let's talk with how would you know, like what are symptoms that you may be not even overworking out, because we're not talking about like top athletes right now, but just whether maybe you're doing too much hit, you're not having enough recovery days, like what symptoms or how would you feel that can maybe help? Like, okay, do need a rest day.
Absolutely. So chronic fatigue, number one, right? If you're like always tired, look to the external influences, right? Like your stressors, and exercise is a stressor. So if you're pushing it too much with too much hit and not enough rest, and then on top of that, your work is crazy and you're not having a second rest, So I think you're gonna feel fatigued. So definitely you would feel fatigued. You'd also see decrease in performance, right? So if you're someone who tracks like, how much you can lift in certain movements or your run times or anything like that, you'll see decrease in your performance if you're not recovering properly. You'll also feel muscle soreness and stiffness. Frequent injuries and pain might happen, right? You might experience a little bit more of those. Definitely sleep disturbances, because we know rest and recovery helps with blood sugar too. And so if you're feeling like really stressed out or any of that, that's going to influence blood sugar for the worse. So you'll have sleep disturbances and things like that. And also elevated resting heart rate could also indicate that you are just not taking enough rest, or you're overexerting yourself or anything like that. So those are definitely the physical signs, but there could also be some emotional ones too, right? So like increased anxiety or depression or stress, again, mood swings and low energy, like all those things could be a sign that you're just not balancing movement and rest properly.
Completely. And just kind of building off what you said, if you feel tired after a workout, that could be, of course, there's many moving parts. Like, what are your hormones? What are you eating? Are you hydrated? But workout should give you energy. So if you are like after workout, like you're like, I'm exhausted. How do I go to work? That could be a sign of something is going on, whether it's inflammation, chronic fatigue, but working out should give you energy for the rest of the day.
Percent. I always like to say, like during the exercise, you should be gassed. A lot of times, right? Like depending on what you're doing. If you're doing like a yoga or stretch, of course, we're not going to be gassed. But yeah, during exercise, you should be gassed for the most part, a lot of them. And then afterwards, you should feel recovered. You should be able to hydrate and refuel and feel good, and like you have more energy than you did prior to.
Your brain is clear. You're ready to go.
I also see a lot of times like, and this isn't necessarily like a direct, but a correlation, but weakened immune system. So people get sick a lot more, right? When they're not recovering properly or they're doing too much hit. And again, it's like that stress on our body, right? It's just too much. And so I do see that a lot, like people that happens, get sick a lot, but I also see that with a really sedentary lifestyle too, right? So it's definitely that balance. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And just kind of being puffy, feeling inflamed. Because like you said, working out puts stress on your body, and stress is good. It's good inflammation. But when you have too much stress, then that's when your body can't clear it out. So it's okay. What are the pieces? We're just talking about the working out piece.
Exactly. And I do think that at the end of the day, you just have to listen to your body, right? In terms of balance. And I know like I get this way too sometimes. It's like, okay, I have goals in mind. And for instance, I was sick last week, right? And I'm like, okay, I know that I really should take a rest day. Like I know I know it in my head. But I don't want to because I want to stick to my goals and I want to do that. I ended up taking rest day because I knew that that would benefit me more than it would to push myself, right? But that's years in the making. When I first started off, it was like I had to keep pushing, I had to do this, and that would only further detract from my goals and how I felt. So I think it is just really important. Always come back to listening to your body first and foremost versus pushing because that's going to further deter you from getting to that goal and probably keep you sicker for longer.
Exactly. Because when you do take your rest days and then you go to the gym, you feel so much stronger. And you're like, yeah, rest days are good. Yes.
Rest days are very good. They're very important. And it doesn't mean that you have to sit on the couch as a rest day. You can active recovery, right? And we could talk about this too, but I think that's a misconception that rest day has to be like total rest shutdown. And if that's your MO, sure. Like if you want a day in bed, go for it, right? But I do think that movement every day is really important. And so it could be as simple as like just some dynamic stretching or a walk around the block, or, if you're someone who really likes physical activity daily, go for a short swim or do a Pilates class or do a little yoga class, right? It doesn't have to be like completely sedentary. That I don't want you to be completely sedentary. Yeah.
And I think too, when people feel like guilty about a rest day, there's pieces to like one, we've been told that we need to work out every day. Type A personalities totally get that. But I think overall too, like you said, people think of rest days as cheat days. So now you're not moving, you're eating terrible. So then, yeah, you're not going to feel good. And I think we've kind of mentioned too, like a lifestyle. We're talking about working out as a piece, but if you're eating well, you're hydrating, you're taking your supplements, rest days feel good. And so I think that like remembering all the pieces of what makes you feel good, what makes you feel healthy, and remembering rest day is not cheat day as well. And
It's part of your programming. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I always like to say that. Yeah. I think that's really important.
yes, I think people was like thinking about this podcast, like what brings the guilt? And I'm like, yes, totally understand the type A personality, the scheduling. But I think too, we've just thought of a rest day as a cheat day.
Right. Sedentary, like doing nothing, like a lazy day, which like, yeah, it could be lazier than your other days, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be a couch potato.
And eating.
Right. Or revert back to old habits or things like that. So I think of it as part of the program, right? Part of your plan to optimize your health and well-being. And it is part of the plan. It's needed.
It's so needed. So needed. Yes.
So yeah, I think looking out for those signs and symptoms of overtraining or maybe underbalancing the rest days, but also always coming back to just like how you're feeling. And it's okay if you need 2 rest days. It's okay if you need 3. I think it's just thinking about, what's going to make you feel best and perform better when you eventually do get back to doing what you want to do.
And I think too, when you're scheduling your workouts, once you schedule, you'll have a couple rest days throughout the day. I mean, but throughout the week, but it's not like you're taking 3 days off in a row, just your normal, right? That happens, but just that's why I think too, scheduling just takes the worry off of my rest days. So then it's like your rest days are part of your schedule. So it's just the norm and not like, oh, I'm not working out today.
Absolutely. And like you think about training for really anything, they're always going to incorporate rest days, right? You can look up marathon training programs online and you'll see just how many rest days there are, but they come into the programming. And so I think even if you're not training for anything specific, it's going to be just as important to see those benefits and to see, your goals come to fruition. They're vital.
Vital. How many, like, what would you say is the optimal number of days that you should work out?
Oh, I think that's so different for everybody. Yeah. I mean, depending on who you are and what goals you have, I'm, I think every day you should have some sort of movement. So, and that doesn't mean working out. It just means movement, right? So, ideally you would move your body every single day. Now, I would think from like someone who just wants to optimize their body, I like to recommend strength training 3 days a week. That's kind of like I like that. I also like some sort of cardiovascular support, like 2 days a week. And then maybe like an active recovery day, 2 days a week, with that can include those mobility, mindful activities, stretching, walking, Pilates, yoga, that kind of thing. And yeah, if you need one full rest day, sure. But again, I think from a purely just optimization standpoint, we should be moving our body every day.
And I think too, if a lot of strength training, you can get the cardiovascular benefits too. I think people forget that. So just knowing that, that's what I always say. I'm like, if someone can just do strength training 3 days a week, like that, start there and then you can build.
Build, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then again, like as long as you're moving your body, right? We want to try to get a certain amount of steps in a day. So that could be walking up and down the stairs. That could be walking your dog outside like 10 times a day, right? I mean, it's just moving your body at the end of the day. So yeah, I think in terms of like the amount, it's so specific for everyone, but
Exactly.
like 3 days a week, ideally, like minimum, and then you can always build from there.
Exactly. And I think what we also need to touch on, talking about rest and nutrition, because I feel like you can't talk about working out without talking about those two, because we talked about rest days, but the importance of sleep specifically.
Do you want me to talk about like how to support exercise through nutrition and sleep?
I was just making sure that we can't talk like you're not going to see one, you're not going to feel the full benefits, just feeling better day to day, and the health benefits without, the cliche that abs are made in the kitchen is like, it's like, yes, it's the fact that who cares about abs, but just about the overall health benefits. You have to have nutrition, really focusing on proteins, fats, fiber, healthy carbs, and trying to reduce, sugar intake, processed foods from overall to get the benefits of working out, meaning, of course, building muscle, but just feeling better day to day, less inflamed.
Totally. I think nutritional strategies are always so important to discuss and like they're extremely vital from like a recovery standpoint, but also your fitness goals, right? If you don't pay attention to what you're eating, you're probably not going to see the results that you want or feel the full capabilities of movement because it kind of it enhances it, right? So I always like to think about just like overall calorie allotment. You need enough calories in order to support both rest and ongoing fitness goals. Now, of course, not all calories are created equal, so that doesn't go into the fact of like what you're actually eating. But I do think it's very important to ensure that you're not under fueling by any means when it comes to exercise and the goals that you have. Again, that doesn't mean go out and eat like 3 bags of Oreos and Taco Bell and things like that. There's calories and then there's calories. But yeah, definitely making sure that we're not under fueling, always important. With enough protein also. I can't tell you how many women particularly, but also men I see like grown adults that eat about 50 grams of protein a day. And they're like, why can't I build the muscle mass that I want? And I'm like, well, that's probably why, right? We're just not fueling properly. It's hard for me to give like an actual number of how many grams of protein because everyone's different, but every adult should be having at least 100 grams of protein. Like you should at least. And so I think it is really important to support our muscle growth and repair and energy replenishment. So definitely making sure you have enough protein, fluids. I think you mentioned that before, like electrolytes and stuff. Absolutely. You want to make sure that you're drinking enough water to stay hydrated. Again, I think this is like a rough estimate, but I like people to have around 2 liters of water a day, especially if they're exercising. And then if you are someone who really sweats a lot, you need to replenish those electrolytes. A lot of times people have like those like the white marks after they're sweaty, they're salty sweaters, and so they're losing a lot of salt in their sweat. And so if that's you, make sure you're having those electrolytes. I recommend them for everybody, but especially those people that are salty sweaters, you want to make sure that you're replenishing those electrolytes. And yeah, you mentioned before the healthy fats, like it supports joint health and inflammation, especially omega-3 fatty acids. So think like fatty fish and walnuts and chia seeds and flax seeds, things like that. The monounsaturated fatty acids, so like olive oil and avocado and nuts, those are really important for hormone production and inflammation and joint health, like we mentioned. So yeah, I think there's so many different nutritional aspects. And that's also one of the benefits of working one-on-one with a coach, right? We can streamline it for you specifically, but yeah, you're probably not going to see the results that you want. I can ensure you you're not going to see the results you want if you're not paying attention to what you're also doing eating wise.
And you talked about calories. We were so told to focus on the calories. When you need to focus on the chemicals in the food, that's what's causing gaining weight, diabetes, cancer. It's when you think about like the 1980s and the snack wells, that's when like the low fat movement came into the 100-calorie packs, right? We were always told, and it's like, absolutely not. Like, you need calories. It's where they're coming from. You're eating 100 different chemicals in one sitting. Your body doesn't know what to do with it. And that's where all the issues are going to stem from.
100%. And the reason I only brought up calories is to talk about like under eating. But yes, I think it's a really good point because they're not all calories are created equal. Definitely. So when I say ensure enough calories, it doesn't mean, pizza and Doritos and all that stuff. And that could fit into somehow into a healthy lifestyle a little bit, but that doesn't mean that's what we're focused on, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Once you watch that video that when you light an Oreo on fire, it doesn't melt, maybe.
Probably stay away from the things that don't melt. Yeah. Or those ice cream bars that they leave out for like, oh, I know.
Because there's healthier options of all those things, right? So I'm not saying like, don't eat ice cream or don't eat a cookie. Just pick a better option.
Right. And so that's what I mean by like fit. Like I still eat pizza, but I don't eat the pizza that's coming from like Domino's or, Little John's or whatever. So I think there's different options. I still eat cookies, but again, I don't eat Oreos, right? So I think, yeah, you pick those better options and like, then you can have these things and make them fit into your healthy lifestyle. But yes, great point. Calories are not all created equal. So, but yes, ensuring that you have enough good calories, nutrient dense calories that are going to support your fitness goals, going to support your wellness goals. That's very important for overall health and wellness.
Exactly. And then, we'll kind of end it on sleep because I think, do you have an Oura ring? You don't have an Oura ring.
I do. Yeah, I'm just not wearing it. It's charging.
But I think, what's so helpful. I mean, there's so many cool benefits, but on an Oura ring, if you don't sleep well, it tells you like not to work out or do a slower workout, which I think just kind of summarizes because one, sleep is the foundation of all your health because it helps clean out your, sick cells, it helps clean out your brain. Like it is the one time, that your body can fully heal. And so with, sleep and working out, that's where your muscles can recover. That's where you clean out the inflammation and just, you have to sleep if you want to feel good in the gym.
Absolutely have to. And I think we've talked about this before on the podcast. Like once you go through a period of not sleeping, you realize like how horrible you feel without sleep. And I think it's almost like it shocks you back into being like sleep is probably the most important thing that you can do for your body. Yeah, exercise, nutrition, all that. Like I'm a dietitian. I love food. I think it's so important. But if you're not sleeping, it all goes out the window. It all goes out the window. So like I really do think that sleep is the fundamental for like overall wellness.
Go to bed like after 11. If like you stay awake after 11, then your body's like starts producing like more fat.
Oh, it definitely controls your metabolism. Yeah. And so I can only imagine that it would decrease your ability to probably process it. But yeah, I mean, if you think of it like indirectly, the blood sugar management aspects from it could definitely lead to increased fat storage and things like that. And if you're eating too late at night, like the same can happen, right? Because you're interrupting your sleep. But yeah, I mean, in deep sleep, like our growth hormone levels are higher. So it supports tissue repair and muscle growth and recovery, right? So like if you're not sleeping well, even if you're taking a rest day, but you're still not sleeping well, you're not going to have those benefits that you need to repair your muscles and to support tissue. And it's also at a heightened state of protein synthesis, right? So that's where it rebuilds and repairs those muscle fibers that were actually stressed. So, I mean, if you think about it that way, it's like, of course you need to sleep. And that's when your glycogen stores are repaired too. So it ensures that you have enough energy and enough fuel for your next workout. So just from like an actual exercise perspective, sleep is fundamental. It's extremely important. It also enhances our immune function, right? So like I was talking about before, our immune system can go down when we're not balancing enough. It supports fighting off those small illnesses, and it helps repair those small injuries that could be caused by exercise. So if you do get sick and you have to take more rest days, it's kind of counterintuitive, right? So trying to prevent those illnesses and help support repair and regrowth is just so important. So yeah, just from an exercise perspective, like sleep alone is very vital, but like there's so many other benefits from sleep that we could probably have a whole nother podcast just on.
Oh, completely. I just like, we just can't talk about working out without just mentioning nutrition and sleep, right? We have to add that in there. Yeah. And two, we talked about all the physical, benefits of working out from, building muscle, but then what does that mean? Reducing different chronic diseases, different cancer rates, and then just talking about too the mental aspect. There's so many studies about how working out helps reduce anxiety and depression, even more than prescribed medications for anxiety and depression.
I mean, we know, I'll quote like Legally Blonde, right? Where they say like, uh, exercise releases endorphins, and endorphins make people happy, and happy people don't just go around killing people, right? I mean, it's true. Like it increases endorphins and increases serotonin. And those two things make us feel good and happy and refreshed. So I do think that yeah, there's so many benefits from exercise. And the mental aspects are profound from it. And then like blood sugar regulation, and there's so many different things that we could talk about. But yeah, exercise, movement. It's important.
I always say, I'm like, if everyone just moved their body and had a little more testosterone, the world would be a much better place.
Sunshine. Those are like the recipes for sunshine, testosterone, and movement. Yeah. World domination right there.
Right? I'm like, I don't know what I would do if I didn't work out.
I truly don't. We were talking about this before the podcast came on, but yeah, I think it's like it really gets to me when I don't get to move my body. I feel that brain fog sweep in, and I feel like low energy, and I feel like I'm craving more sugar, and it's just all connected. And I think that's obviously it's years of investment into my own health, and realizing what's playing a factor, and what's impacting. But you start somewhere, and you start to realize like how important these things are for you, and they become your non-negotiables, right? And so if you're listening to this and you're like, i don't I don't exercise right now, or I don't know where to start, you just start somewhere, right? You start small, and you start to pay attention to how you feel when you do these things. And little by little, you realize like, wow, this feels amazing. This feels so much better than I was. And so it makes you want to do more. You're getting on that positive feedback loop, right? It makes you want to sleep better. It makes you want to have less stress. It makes you want to eat better, right? And it kind of just like propels you into this wellness direction. And then it forces you to pay more attention to your body. So I think it's just a fantastic place to start, especially on a wellness journey, is movement, because it is accessible to everybody. And there's so many different free resources that you can utilize. So just get out there and move your body.
So, well, thank you.
Of course, anytime.
This has been a production of Optimal Bio. Optimal Bio is CEO Tyler Brannon, Medical Director Greg Brannon, podcast host Tyler Brannon, production assistance by Core Media, Beth Gravencourt, Administrator, Kevin Duthu, Executive Producer. The podcast can be found on our website, optimalbio.com, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Our theme song is Sunwave by Paradiso, provided by Epidemic Sound.